Yo, what is up everyone, back here with another video. In today's video, we are going to be doing a tier list on the new Regulation D format. So pretty much what I did with this tier list, because if you guys had noticed throughout the tier list, I've kind of been tweaking with the structure a little bit. I did reduce the amount of Pokemon that I'm actually going to be ranking, specifically because a lot of times when I was ranking Pokemon, like if they weren't viable, I would just be putting them in the F tier, or I'd be putting them in the F tier like ahead of time. So the thing is like, I don't want to spend too much time doing that, in the video, because I don't think it like really makes sense. So I omitted all the Pokemon that are really just like not competitively viable or like don't have any results to really back them up. And I made sure to still include all the new Pokemon that were added. And going forward, this is how I'm going to structure these tier lists. I'm going to be including all the Pokemon that were used that were solid, right? In the previous like format or whatever like rule set it is. And then also all the new Pokemon will always be included because obviously they're new Pokemon, right? So we're going to be talking about them. So first off is Abomasnow. Abomasnow to me is like kind of in the C tier. So obviously having weather control is nice. It's the only main snow setter right now. I think that's the only thing that like keeps it alive at the moment, like as a Pokemon. If it didn't have snow, it would have nothing going for it, but it does at the very least like offer, some kind of utility through that, right? So I think that being able to set snow for some partners is like kind of nice. So you can at least get away with that, right? So Alolan Muck to me is probably going to be in the F tier. It does pressure like Rillaboom specifically with like Poison Jab, right? And it has a dark typing, which does allow it to like kind of like sit in front of like a couple of Mons. And like it is a really good side spam answer, right? Like AV Muck just walls side spam. My thing is just like, besides that, like what else are you doing? Like, are you contributing more than just that? And like, to me, I don't know if Muck really offers enough to like really justify being higher than like even like high F, right? I feel like an F tier, by the way, is like it can still be used. It's just like not super amazing. Honestly, like I'd probably rather keep F for like really really bad Pokemon. So I'll put Muck on C, but it's like bottom of C, right? Um, then we have Amoonguss, or sorry, we have Persian first. Persian is a Pokemon I actually think has a lot of potential. Even though Urshifu is really popular in the format and Fluttermane is really popular in the format, I feel like if someone finds the right use for Persian, it could actually be like an insane mon. So I'm going to put it in the B tier just because I feel like it has some untapped potential that hasn't been explored yet. I can't justify putting it any higher, obviously, because I do think that it hasn't really had a high like placement or anything so far, and it didn't really have any appearances in any of the tournaments so far, but I do think it has the general potential to be a really good Pokemon. Fast Fake Out, fast Parting Shot, you get a lot out of it, right? Amoonguss, S tier, 100%. Amoonguss is just an incredible mon. Regardless of format to format, it'll always be good. Specifically, too, the main thing is just like Amoonguss with Rage Powder and Rocky Helmet to redirect Urshifu Water is already good. And then you have like Spore Pressure into a lot of Pokemon. You can force Terra's Grasses out or like swap in, force Goggles Mons swap in, right? And then you also have, there's that Pollen Puff that you can use on your Pokemon, right? Annihilape is another really strong option. Annihilape has access to a lot of useful moves, Drain Punch, Rage Fist, Bulk Up. Those tools allow it to be very, very like powerful in the format. And I think that it's still really, really solid. I just think it's a little underexplored right now because of the new toy syndrome that a lot of people have. I do think that by world, someone will find a good use for Annihilape that does at least allow it to be a yeah, I'd say a B tier Pokemon is pretty, fair for it. Arcanine. So Arcanine does still have Intimidate, right? It still has Will-O-Wisp. The problem is now there's a lot more Pokemon in the metagame that pressure it. Heatran, Urshifu existing obviously isn't super great for it. There's some other stuff like Lando Eye that's around Landorus Therian. So it's a bit harder to use this mon and kind of justify keeping it around on a lot of teams. I do think because it's the only fire type within Intimidate, like it definitely has some utility, and it has some support moves that it can definitely utilize to help its partners, but it has to be in B tier because I think it's really declined in terms of how viable it is due to all the other threats that are around now. Armarouge to me is actually better than it was in Regulation C, which is really interesting. So I feel like the reason why it's better than it was in Regulation C, because you think adding more things like, oh, maybe would it get worse? I actually think it's better because there's less ruin spam. Chinpow is high usage, granted, for sure, but there are ways you can play around that, and for sure, there is like a lot of uses you can get out of Indeedee Armarouge. And I think that people will wisen up to that, come closer to Worlds, and maybe consider like, countering something like that more often. But yeah. or like countering this kind of like pair more often in DD armor specifically. Articuno is like C tier. It's not like trash enough to be in the F tier, but like it's not super great, right? Like I would say this is fringe on viability. Like it gets to be there only because it's like a legendary with like decent stats, not because it has like its own merit that like it like allows it to be there, if that makes sense, right? Like there's nothing it really does special. Azelf is kind of the same thing. Like yeah, like it has enough stats to like be in the C tier because you can maybe put it on like some fringe team because like it has the stats to do it. Like maybe Terra Normal, like Band Explosion, but beyond like ladder gimmicks, I don't really see it like doing that much, right? Azumarill to me is like I think it's better than Muck for sure, but I think Azu is definitely way worse now because of Rillaboom existing, because of Urshifu being in the format, and like there's just a lot of Pokemon that like pressure Azu or like out damage it. Azu is not the most amazing Pokemon, right? So I think that in general, like it can take that C tier spot because I don't think it's like F, like it's not the worst Pokemon to have. Definitely not like as great as it was in Regulation C, I think, and that's also partially contributed to the fact that the ruins aren't as common, right? All right, Basculegion. So Basculegion to me is like a solid A tier pick. I think it's really strong on Rain, and I think Last Respects is an incredibly strong tool. Its typing's really good. Like it walls Ursh, it pressures Heatran really hard. It pressures a lot of Pokemon with Last Respects, even if they're supposed to check it. So it's very useful because not only does it have such strong water stab that you can capitalize with next to Rain, but then also Last Respects is just such a strong move that it just adds an extra dimension to the Mon where it could beat its checks after a certain couple of knockouts that they might incur on their team, right? So we have Excalibur. Excalibur to me is like either in B or high C. So Bax is a weird one. I think Heatran and Urshifu existing is really bad for it. I think the fact that Rillaboom and Amoonguss are really common and Landorus are really common is good for it. Iron Hands is also really popular as well right now, which is kind of hard for it's hard for Bax, right? I think it's either very high C or low B. I'd probably put it above Alolan Persian, honestly, because I could see it probably having a bit more viability than that, but like it's definitely deserving of the B spot maybe, and like it could be considered for high C, right? I might even consider putting Persian down in high C, honestly. Gastrodon. So Gastrodon is really strong right now. I actually think that Gastrodon has gotten better into this format because there are a lot more water types that it actually wants to redirect. Like there are actually good water types, right? Like Urshifu's an actual water type, you know? There's especially too like Dondozo still exists, right? It just has more use now because there are actual water types that can like take advantage, that it can take advantage of rather. So I think that that does give it a bit more it gives it a bit more use, and I definitely think like it is pretty well placed, right? Because checking Urshifu is a really big deal, especially in this format, and Terra's definitely help it as well. Breloom to me is like definitely a mon that's like F. I honestly like I'm starting to lean towards putting Muck in F as well. I don't know if F is really fair. I would say it's like, so F tier is like to me not like okay it's awful, it's just like probably the lowest tier of like everything on this list, right? So I'd probably put Azu down there, honestly. I think like no, Azu's a bit better than these two guys, but like I'd say F is like kind of going down to like where it's like this is probably a Pokemon where like only one team would really use it well, right? Bronzong to me is like a C tier mon. I think it definitely works with like certain partners. It was really popular with Ting Lu in the previous format, Regulation C. Besides that, it really didn't do much else, right? That was pretty much it for it. So I could see maybe some new tools helping it out, but since Crest is so good, I think it definitely disincentivizes you from running Bronzong unless you have a really good reason, right? Brute Bonnet is one of the other mons that just got hit really hard, I think, by the fact that like there are so many more Pokemon that can pressure it. I would probably say it's like a C tier pick at this point, and its typing is the main culprit of this, and the fact that it doesn't have a good ability, right? Like having photosynthesis is not good for it because what it essentially means is that you're not going to get any benefit from the photosynthesis in a lot of situations, and then also too like you lack a better ability like something like an Amoonguss would have. And of course you can make the argument Brute Bonnet and Amoonguss totally different Pokemon, right? But you know, even with Brute Bonnet's added offense, like what is that contributing in this format? Urshifu out damages it. Rillaboom is a better support mon in general. Right? So there's just, it doesn't really offer anything in its role that like makes it better than like another Pokemon you could have. Maybe on Trick Room offense, I could see, which is why it's still in the C tier, but it's definitely going to be around like the Bronzong area of viability, I'd say. Bruxish, I don't know why people like this Pokemon so much. I think it's really bad. I get the whole dazzling, it's cute because you can block priority. Like, just use a better priority blocker. Like, Furdraff is automatically better in most situations, right? So I'd probably be recommending Furdraff most of the time. Ceruledge to me has gone down to the F tier. I just think there are too many Pokemon that like just do things better than it in a lot of cases, right? Ceruledge, for the most part, right, can go for bulk up like Bitterblade, Shadow Sneak stuff, but then it's like, why wouldn't I just use a better ghost type in like Annihilate or Basculegion or Flutter? They all do things better than it. Even Dragapult, right? Like Dragapult's kind of popular now. And like, I think Dragapult is really good at like that physical, strong ghost type offense role, right? Basculegion is really good at that role on Rain, and then Annihilate's good in the setup role. So it's like, it's pretty much outclassed by all the other Pokemon. And like, as a Flash Firemon, Heatran's just objectively better. So that's kind of troublesome for it. I think Charizard is a weird one. Charizard really only would ever work on Sun offense. I think everyone knows that. So for that reason, it has to be in the C tier. Not because the Pokemon doesn't have potential, but I think simply just because it literally like only works on one specific kind of team, right? So it very much limits the Mon in terms of its viability in general. It's still like decent on Sun. It like nukes things, you know? The issue is that if it's only working on one team, it's only really contributing to that one archetype, so it can't be rated that high. Chien-Pao is really strong. I would say it's S tier, honestly. The fact it enables Dragonite, which is its most popular partner right now, but also enables Urshifu, is like really nasty. I think Ice Spinner Surging Strike's coverage is like incredibly strong in the format right now, and you really get to see that in a lot of instances, right? I think that the teams that use a Chien-Pao sometimes don't even need a Dragonite on them to be good. And even the team that won Victory Road today was used, or I guess yesterday, I don't know, like whenever this video like goes up. But pretty much that team had a it had just Chien-Pao, like plain Chien-Pao. There was no Dragonite on it. So all right, Chesnaught. So Chesnaught's here because he's one of the new Pokemon. I would probably put him in like C or F maybe. So Chesnaught has this one cute niche. It completely walls Rillaboom. It completely walls Urshifu. It can body press into Heatran after a couple of iron defenses, right? It can set up in front of a bunch of attackers. It is bulletproof, so it's immune to Shadow Ball from Flutter. Now that all sounds really good, right? But now just factor in that you have to commit a Terra to make it not weak to Moonblast. And then also, too, you would be removing its grass type, which makes it inherently good against other Pokemon. And then also remember that it doesn't have any immediate option to remove Flutter Mane. So even though its Iron Defense Body Pressing might be immune to it, if you have to least to Flutter, Flutter can just kill all your partners, and then it just beats you anyways because the other, mons win. If you Terra Fire in front of it, then there's an Urshifu, right? So it's a little bit awkward, and I think Hizui and Gudra does what it wants to do a lot better. There can definitely be a niche for Chesnaught, potentially, because of the Iron Defense Body Press, but I genuinely think that like Gudra just does everything it does better for the most part, and Gudra has two abilities it can take advantage of. Honestly, I'm convincing myself kind of to put this in. I kind of want to move his Elf, and I kind of want to move Chesnaught down to F. Chesnaught can be in like bottom of C, but like yeah, that's the main issue with it, right? Chi-Yu. So Chi-Yu is not as bad, I think, as like it might look in usage right now. I actually think Chi-Yu is pretty decent. I just think that like it's a little awkward right now because Urshifu is everywhere and Iron Hands is everywhere. And then also Landorstarian is everywhere. I think if you find the right team for Chi-Yu, it could be really strong. I'd probably put it near like Annihilate, but I think its ability is really strong. And I can definitely see Chi-Yu like being in an A tier. It's just right now, it's like very awkward to kind of bring it in this metagame. I think if someone finds out the right way to use it though, it could be incredibly strong, right? I definitely think that could work, right? The problem is Chi-Yu is one of those mons, like, okay, so, like, let's say I use my Chi-Yu as, like, my Chien-Pao, D-Knight answer, right? And I led Chi-Yu with Terra Ghost, and I led, Flutter, right? That lead can't, like, it can win, but, like, it's not good into something like a, Urshifu Water and a Tornadus lead, right? And that's, like, obviously, like, just part of it comes down to how you build your team and how you're leading, but Chi-Yu just has, like, that kind of position as one of those mons that can just, like, auto-lose to certain leads if it's led improperly, so, like, that can definitely be a problem for it, right? Cinderace, to me, is, like, F tier. I think the Libero nerf just kind of ruined it forever. It's not, and, like, also losing Dynamax was bad for it, but I think the fact that it lost Libero is just, like, devastating for it. Colossal's gimmicky, but, you know, of course, Colossal is Colossal, so I feel like it has to go near the Chestnut area. Honestly, I'm considering, like, putting Chestnut and Colossal together. I think they make up, like, a decent part of the F area of this list, right? I would say, like, F, again, represents, like, Pokemon. I would be, like, maybe on one team or one specific thing, but, like, not too much. Corviknight is interesting. So Corviknight is a Pokemon that I feel like definitely has potential. The main issue that it has is just all the power creep that's come up, and also too, a lot of the Pokemon, including Heatran now, just completely body it, right? So it makes it inherently a little worse, right? That being said, I could definitely see Corviknight having some viability on certain teams, which is why I would put it in like the high C tier. I guess C for Corviknight's pretty thematically appropriate, or like name appropriate, right? But I do feel like it can have, you know, some success. Cresselia. So Cresselia to me is an interesting one. I feel like Cresselia can either be in the A or S tier. I think right now it has a lot of high usage just because of the kind of Pokemon it is. It's very good. It's bulky. It's a good Trick Room setter. We haven't had that really yet. We had like Armor and we had a couple of others, but it wasn't the same, right? Now we actually have like an incredibly strong Trick Room setter that's really bulky and can stick around. I would say if Cress is going to be included in the S tier, it would probably be in like the high the low part of S or the really high part of A. For now, I'll put it in S, but I reserve the right, of course, to potentially lower it after this. Delphox is an F. Don't use Delphox. I don't think this one's good. Dondozo. So Dondozo is another Pokemon I still think is incredibly strong. I think it's always been good, and I think it will continue to be good as usual. I just think the tools it has access to is like incredibly like useful, right? Realistically, whenever you're using Dondozo, the main thing that you're taking advantage of is either the Yawn plus like very bulky Ting-Lu stuff, or you're using a, you know, Dozo with Tatsugiri, and then you have offensive partners around it. There's a lot of customization actually around how you can run Dondozo, and I think for, you know, for what it does, it's definitely like worth at least keeping in mind, you know. At the very least, I think it deserves like to be in the A tier. I could even see it being higher potentially, but I think there's enough tools now that deal with it where it's not like obnoxious to the fact where it has to be in like it feels fair. Like, so the difference with Dondozo in, I feel like this was more so Series 2 and even more so Series 1. Dozo felt like really, really oppressive in certain cases. I think now that there are so many new Pokemon, it does balance out a lot because there are a lot of things that can actually just actively beat Dondozo. So Dozo's still really strong, but it has more checks it has to be aware of. So it's not like something that is as hard to stop as it was in like previous formats. Dragapult. So Dragapult to me actually has a lot of potential to the point where I would actually consider putting it in like low A or high B. I think this Pokemon with Terra Blast Ghost, the set that Alex Gomez used at NASE, I think it's still incredibly strong in this format because it shreds a lot of the balance teams right now. A lot of the balance teams are using like Flutter, they have Flutter, they have Chien-Pao D-Knight, they have Amoonguss, that kind of team, like Iron Hands, like those kind of structures. Terra Blast Ghost, like Dragapult plus Chien-Pao, pressures so many of those. And I think it's actually something that could end up being meta defining at Worlds. So to me, I would probably say it's either in the like high B tier, like I'd say even like A. I think Dragapult's a really good Pokemon. It's just very limited in what it can be run with. So for that reason, I feel like it has to be like high B, right? But I think when it's run with Chien-Pao, it's actually incredibly strong. So it's definitely a threat. Dragonite, definite A tier. Really solid. It's really good with Chien-Pao. Its only drawback is that it needs Chien-Pao essentially to really do that much right now. I could see it developing to where it'll be a good Pokemon on its own potentially, but I just think like if you're running Dragonite, you're usually getting more value out of it when it has a Chien-Pao. So it's just like, I want the Chien-Pao, right? And that makes it a lot more useful. And also, by the way, I think I just put Tatsugiri here. The assumption was like, obviously they're working together. Tatsugiri's Amon is just like, obviously always going to be with Dondozo if it's run. So it's an automatic A tier. So, because it is codependent on the Dozo, right? So. Drifblim to me is like F tier, so it used to be cute on like size spam teams, but I just think it's like bad now because there's just so much power creep. So Enamorus is a weird Pokemon to me. I think Enamorus is the worst of the genies, like by far. It's not even close. I think it is the worst of the genies. I think that Enamorus deserves like probably a B tier spot. I think that in general, Enamorus can potentially do some stuff if you like use it properly. Like, you know, you have like contrary superpower, you have like maybe the side eerie impulse stuff with the Enamorus, even though I think that's a little gimmicky. Side scary face, it's cute. and it does have access to Springtide Storm, which is also cute. However, I do think that overall, Enamorus is much more limited in what it does and its roles than like the other genies, and for that reason, I definitely have to put it lower. I'd actually probably drop Persian down to C at this point and consider dropping Bax and Enamorus down, because I feel like B tier mons are like still very viable, and I feel like we're getting to the point where like these Pokemon are starting to look weird. I'd probably put Enamorus still in B, but I think Bax definitely deserves to be a bit lower than Enamorus, right? And Arcanine maybe a bit lower because I think Arcanine's in a really rough spot as well. Enamorus Darian's a weird one. I feel like Enamorus Darian actually might be a little bit better than Enamorus, to the point where I'd consider putting it higher. The main benefit that Enamorus Darian has is Overcoat, and then it's a really slow, so it works on Trick Room pretty well. So I could see Enamorus Therian on a Trick Room team work like incredibly strong for putting on pressure against like, you know, a bunch of teams that use Amoonguss as their Trick Room matchup. So that I could see. Espathra, I have Espathra Sandy Shocks here because I know people are gonna try it. I just wanted to let you know that I thought it was bad. I didn't think they were really worth including on this list. I just want to let you know I just think it's trash. But like, if you want to run it, you go for it, right? I put them together because that's kind of what I think about both of them. Friddraft is actually okay. So Friddraft did actually do well in the most recent Victory Road tournament. Actually got a top 8. I actually think Friddraft might be a sleeper pick in this format, because there's actually so much priority. 2 fake out mons in Iron Hands and Rillaboom everywhere, right? You have E-Speed Dragonite, Sucker Punch Pow, and like there are a bunch of other like random priority moves around in the format right now because of the home decks like adding a lot more Pokemon. I think that it's actually like a huge sleeper, right? I think it could actually be really strong. The more I think about it, by the way, I might drop Arcanine lower because Hizui and Arcanine's better, by the way. Just look at this list. Flamigo automatically gets put in the C tier. It only literally has a place on this list because it can be used as a gimmick with Perish Dondozo, which is still like an archetype. Sorry, I was like checking something. Like I thought it was a bug on. Is this a bug? No, it's not a bug. Okay, I'm good. I thought there was like a bug on my desk, and I was like looking for a second. I was like, Anyways, Fluttermane, oh dude, this thing easiest S tier of my life. This mon had 94% usage in the top 16 of the Grassroots tournament that just happened. It is a good Pokemon. Like, it is better than Amoonguss. It is pretty much on every team. Built-in Chien-Pao D-Knight counter if you don't Terra and you have enough bulk. Like, your coverage hits everything in the format. It hits itself, right? It also hits Iron Hands. It hits Urshifu. It hits a lot of these top meta threats. So it's like, it's just so strong with this coverage. It's hard not to put it there. Galarian Articuno to me is like a C tier. I think it's just awkward. It's not bad, but like there are better psychic types. There's a better Trick Room setter. It has competitive, which is cute. I will give it that. I think competitive is a cute use for it. However, the problem you have is that what's proccing the competitive? Because if you're against the Landers, they could just not bring it. And then Arcanine's not really good right now. Hizui and Arcanine maybe, but Hizui and Arcanine can hit you with rock moves. Right? And also, too, we're solely discounting the fact that there are definitely dark types in this format as well. Galarian Moltres is like a B for me. I actually feel like this mon has a lot of potential. It just hasn't really been explored yet. The reason why I think it could be incredibly strong is because of the Berserk ability plus the Nasty Plot Fiery Wrath. I think Fiery Wrath is a really, really good spread move, and I think if someone can find the right way to use Moltres, it can actually be like incredibly nasty. But yeah, the 2 Slowbros, they go in F, unfortunately. They're not cutting it this format. I don't think they're bottom. I think like they're probably like here-ish. Probably lower than Nuzlocke. I think Bruxish does deserve to be higher, and then Muck deserves to be like around here. Galarian Zapdos is probably the best of the 3 birds. I think it probably deserves like a high B spot. I wouldn't say like higher than like, I would say maybe higher than Enamorus, because I could see it like being kind of like one of those like balance core killers. If you look at Rillaboom, Ursh, and Heatran, they all get shredded by G-Zap, right? And if they don't have a good answer for it, it can just kind of run through those kind of teams. So I think that automatically does place Galarian Zap as like, you know, a pretty decent Pokemon, right? I think that it definitely has like some utility there. Gallade is only here because on Psy Spam with a Gallade, it's actually really scary if you have like dark types meant to beat them. But I do think it's like pretty underwhelming. Garchomp is interesting. So I think Garchomp actually has an incredible amount of potential. However, I do think that now there's a lot more competition for ground types, which makes it inherently like not as optimal of a choice all the time. So for me, I would say that probably lands Garchomp down at the bottom of B for me. I think the Clear Amulet SD set is actually still incredibly good, and I think that it can work on against certain teams. The only problem is grassy terrain exists now, so you'd have to be able to like play around that. But I do think on the right team it could be really good. Garganical has just kind of gotten worse and worse over time. However, I do think that it will always have like a little bit of a tiny niche on like a stall team. So for that reason, I definitely think it deserves to kind of be in this like general area. I don't think that necessarily it's. I don't think necessarily that Garganical is a Pokemon that it like works right now in the pace of the game, but maybe on the right team there could be a use for it. Goldingo is interesting to me. I feel like Goldingo is one of those like high B Pokemon. I think that it's actually has a lot of potential. I actually want to move G-Zap up a little bit compared to these guys. I think that right now Goldingo definitely has a lot of potential because of good as gold being immune to spore. You know, you wall like you don't wall Urshifu, but you can sit in front of it decently comfortably if you have the right support around you. And then also you can run Terra Water as well. You wall like Rillas besides knockoff, but even if they knock you off, like you can play around that like decently. And then also too, just steel coverage in general is very strong, right? I just think steel in general is a very like powerful type, like, you know, just coverage move, especially when Flutter Mane is like number one mon in the format. So I think that's, you know, very like decent. So I haven't seen much from Glastrier. I definitely think the mon's underexplored at the moment. The issue it has is just there's no Dynamax for it, and it lost a lot of good moves. I think it lost close combat, if I'm not mistaken. And even if it has it, it's still kind of rough for it. I know it lost high horsepower. The problem is that like, okay, so you have to play in a format with Glastrier that has intimidators, and if they aren't intimidators, right, there's screens, and if there isn't screens, you have to break through Iron Hands, you have to break through Urshifu, you have to break through Heatrans behind subs. It's just really annoying. It's not like unusable, and it's definitely not like an impossible Pokemon to play. I just think that it has a lot of things like against it, this format, that make it hard. Glamora is a B tier for sure. I think Glamora is probably deserving of being a bit higher than a Garchomp for a Giraffe. I think Glamora actually can work on a couple teams. I just think it's been a little bit underexplored. But Terragrass Glamora can actually be a real pain for some of the, you know, Rilla Ursh cores, because you can just spam, you know, Mortal Spin, right? And the Venoshock against them. Gothitelle is weird. Flutter being so high in usage always makes it harder, and now there are just more ghost types than ever. I think Gothitelle has definitely been knocked down into like the C category, or like C range of like area, I'd say. I definitely think it's better than like Bronzong and some of these other like kind of middle picks, but like it's not much better than like some of the other niche ones, like, you know, Corviknight, Persian, those Pokemon to me. Like the trapping is nice always, right? Great Tusk, unfortunately, to me, feels like, and I'm not 100% sure because, you know, the meta could change, so this is why I'm leaving it at high C. I think Great Tusk has really suffered from all the Pokemon that have popped up. Landorus, Rillaboom, Cresselia, Urshifu, Dragonite, Chien-Pao on every team, Rain with Basculegion and Pelipper, Gastrodon even is still annoying for it. Amoonguss on every team. It can break through Amoonguss, but it's annoying for it, right? There are a lot more Pokemon that can sit in front of it, and as we reach the end of Regulation C anyways, Great Tusk was kind of falling off a little bit. It was struggling a little bit, and I think that was very indicative of like the meta progressing towards it becoming a bit of a weaker choice. And I think like after, you know, like all these changes, it's definitely gotten even worse from there. Greninja is just here. He's a cool frog. You know, I love frogs, but he ain't much higher than that. Grim to me is like a B tier pick. I actually think Grim has a lot of potential. My issue with Grim is that like every format, I feel like it's like I think he has a lot of potential, but then the comp for him is never found. I think if someone does find the right way to use Grimmsnarl, where it can like completely like change the metagame, could be incredibly good. There's also a chance that the mon is just really bad, and it's kind of like it's like trapping you in, you know, it's like a trap Pokemon. It makes you think it's really good, but like it's not. But 8-turn screens is pretty good. The only issue is Ursh can crit through them, and then Flutter Mane's really popular, which forces you to tear your Grim a lot or play around it, so that's kind of rough for it, right? Gyarados has definitely gotten worse. I would have put Gyarados in A tier back in Regulation C. I think it's kind of gotten knocked a little bit. I'd probably actually put it down in the C category. And the reason why, and it's right next to Arcanine, is because Landorus has just kind of become a better Intimidator than both of them, right? And also, too, the issue is, like, you could argue, okay, Gyarados can switch into Surging Strikes from Urshifu. So, like, okay, yeah, valid, right? But you're not actually, like, stopping it from hitting you for a good chunk of damage with Surging Strikes unless you're running Rocky Helmet, which is fine. But then also, too, you have to consider all the other Pokemon in the format. Inner Focus D-Knight is way more popular, which absolutely shreds Gyarados. You have, you know, other Pokemon that are around, like a Moongus, which can Spore you on switch-in. You have, which of course you could just play around, right? But it's worth mentioning. Fluttermane is something that you do, like, wall a bit better. But the problem is if they have Thunderbolt, then you could get cooked, theoretically, right? Just by Thunderbolt. And also, too, there are just a lot of, like, fringe Pokemon right now that just kind of beat it for some reason. So I'm not saying it's necessarily, like, unusable or, like, it's, like, terrible. It's just, like, I feel like you need the specific right team for it to work, basically, is the way I would put it. All right. So Hariyama literally is only Hard Trick Room. Like, it literally only works on Hard Trick Room. So for that reason, it automatically gets put, like, next to Charizard. Because Charizard literally only works on one kind of team as well. So, like, you have to hold it to the same criteria. Same with the Abomasnow, right? Hatterene, very similar boat. I think all the Hard Trick Room guys are going to go in kind of the same area because they only work in one team. I will say, though, that I think Hatterene is a bit more splashable, right? So for that reason, Hatterene might be a little bit higher than, like, something like the... actually, I don't even know. Because, like, the thing is, like, realistically, like, Crest is better. So I feel like putting it in, like, the C tier is pretty, like, reasonable. It does benefit off a Hard Trick Room, though. I feel like I'm not doing it justice if I put it, like, lower here. I think last year should probably be lower here. But yeah, I think, like, that general area is okay. Hawlucha's only here because Psy Spam Hawlucha was used for a little bit. At like, best, it's going to be C, but Acrobatics does pressure a lot of Pokemon. Like, its coverage actually does pressure a lot of teams. So, Heatran. Heatran's definitely S right now. Its typing's really strong. It has access to Terra Grass, Terra Blast to pressure Urshifu. Its Flash Fire plus Terra Grass combination's really scary. And I think on top of that, too, it also just gets, like, a lot of really good options on the field. And it can hit a lot of Pokemon, right? Even though you hard lose to Ursh, the fact that you beat so much of the rest of the metagame and you're a really good switch into Fairy coverage from Fluttermane automatically makes you, like, a very desirable, like, slot on the team. Hisuian Arcanine is definitely better than regular Arcanine. I would definitely be considering putting Hisuian Arcanine probably in, like, the B category around, like, the Annihilate and Chi-Yu range. I think that as a fire type, it's definitely not bad. And its typing obviously suffers from the fact it dies to ground moves really easily and it dies to water moves really easily, right? But I do think with the right partners that you could potentially get a lot of value out of Hisuian Arcanine. And the extra rock coverage you get is actually really good. Rock coverage hits a lot of the meta Pokemon. I mean, even if you look at the tier list at the moment, right? Like, how many Pokemon on this list actually resist rock, right? Like, I can count 1, 2... and you have fire moves for that one, by the way. And then Garchomp hard walls you, right? But Garchomp's not even that popular right now. So Rock actually hits a lot of teams. It's very hard for them to switch into. So I think that could be something that could be really exploited. Hisuian Avalugg is a travesty, man. They made its special defense worse. I don't know why they did that. Its typing is worse. It just dies to everything, you know? Ice and Rock. Or is it Ice and Rock? I think it's Ice and Rock, yeah. It's not good. Braviary is unfortunately a similar fate. Even though, like, it has decent typing, like, its stats are all weird. It doesn't even work with its, like, ability, I'm pretty sure. And even, like, if you look at it from, like, a Pokemon perspective, there's just better options. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't I just use, like, Galarian Articuno? You know what I mean? With the same typing. It just makes more sense. You know, Decidueye is just not super great either. Oh, Goodra is an interesting one. I actually think Goodra is, like, the high B tier as well. Goodra's Iron Defense Body Press stuff is really nice, and I think it allows it to do a lot in the format. The problem is it's only limited really into that. I mean, some people say you can run, like, AV. I think the fact that it's 2 abilities, Shell Armor and Sap Sipper, makes it very customizable in its role, which makes it really cool, and I really like that. So I think that having flexibility is what you can do as a Pokemon, even though you're running the same set, is super neat, and I think that elevates it a little bit higher in my eyes, especially too because it's really good into core. Hisuian Lilligant to me is, like, also I would put it in A tier because I think, and it has to be with Torkoal, right? But I think Lilycole is, like, actually always good. I just think some people don't run it because they're averse to, like, the risk, right? Where's Torkoal? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to put Hisuian, Lilligant, and Torkoal next to each other. Torkoal also can still run the eject pack set, but also the eruption set's pretty decent. I think it's worth like putting in the A tier. I think it's still really strong. You just have to be really careful with Manual Rain Tornadus and Urshifu, right? So this looks goofy. Why would I remove so many Pokemon that I think aren't viable, but keep Hisuian Quillfish? Dude, this thing has Toxic Spikes, and I actually think that it could be kind of annoying if it's used on the right team with Eviolite. So for that reason, I'm putting it in the C tier. I'm not putting it any higher. I'll put it next to the other Intimidators because I think it would seem really troll if I did. I just genuinely think this Pokemon has like some potential. All right, Hisuian Samurott. Okay, even though it's a cute mon and it has like that move that like sets spikes, it's just like you don't need a dark water type right now. You know what I mean? Like, let's look at all the Pokemon, right? It dies to this, doesn't like this, doesn't appreciate this because Sacred Sword. Even though you can return Sacred Sword, you go last. It hits this, which is nice. It hits this. So it hits these two, right, of the top usage. We look over here, loses the Dundozo, doesn't appreciate this, hits this, which is nice, and hits this, right? But the thing is that all these Pokemon that they hit are usually surrounded by the Pokemon that you hate playing versus, right? And I think that I could see it maybe on one team being a good meta call for a specific kind of like composition, but until then, I'm not like super impressed. Hisuian Typhlosion is kind of a similar boat for me. I feel like with like Eruption, it's actually pretty good, and the fact that it can't be faked out is actually incredibly nice. It can get hit by Sucker Punch, but I still think that it like is a bit limited in what it can do, right? Because it's only an Eruption bot, right? So that automatically kind of has it there. Dude, I think Hisuian Zoroark is actually a B tier mon. I think its typing is like, okay, so imagine you take Zoroark, right? And you're like, wow, this mon kind of sucks. Like, what do I do to make it better, right? You give it a normal ghost type in a Flutter Mane format, right? And a Dragonite Shenpao format, by the way. So it's immune to two of the strongest attacks in the game, right? And it's immune to Fake Out. And you can bait and make them think it's a Zoroark, right? Or make them think it's a regular mon, right? And you could also just keep it in Team Preview and never bring it. I don't think that it's like, I think in open sheets it's a bit weaker, right? For sure. But I think that because of its typing, it's actually a lot stronger of an ability now than like the regular Zoroark was. So I actually think it does have some potential. Fast Wisp, like Shadow Ball, like it has some good tools. I like it a lot. You know, this thing only gets here because of Last Respects, but I don't think you want to run Sand at this point. Bundle to me is like a solid, like, I think it's honestly deserving of maybe A. The only issue that Bundle has is the fact that Rillaboom is so prevalent, but it still hits Rillaboom, right? And like, it still hits Heatran. It hits a lot of Pokemon. I feel like I don't want to underrate Bundle too much because every time Bundle was underrated, it ended up being really good. And I think that Bundle with its booster energy is still the fastest one on the format that's really strong. Iron Hands is S. This mon is insane. I think that Iron Hands is getting better and better every time a regulation comes out, which is kind of crazy because all the time you're like, oh, well, like that doesn't really make sense, right? But no, like every time the new mons get added, Iron Hands just like, it's like, oh, wow, this thing's actually even better now. Dude, it hits Heatran, hits Shenpao, right? Has Fake Out pressure for everything in the format. Helps versus Dozo, helps versus Rain. It's just good Fake Out pressure into a lot of Pokemon. Helps you beat Iron Bundle. You go down here, you're beating Pokemon like G-Zap, right? You're putting on a lot of pressure, and it's just the bulk. The fact it can just sit there with an AV and not die to anything is ridiculous. Jugulis gets put down in the... he's kind of down by the, you know, he's kind of down by the C tier, man. He's holding on for dear life. That's all I'm going to say. Iron Moth, I think also kind of in the Juggy area, you know. It's like, okay, you guys are like, you guys were okay before, so I can't like totally axe you, but like you're questionable for sure. You know what I mean? All right, Jumpluff, you know, Jumpluff holds a special place in my heart, and I do think the speed tier can definitely be like decent, but Jumpluff has really fallen off, so I have no hesitation putting in the C tier, right? It's gonna need a lot. It's gonna need like the right team to make it good on a Sun team, and it only works in Sun, right? King Gambit. So I think King Gambit's kind of slept on right now. So even though King Gambit does traditionally look bad, like versus Chen Pao, it looks bad versus Hands, it looks bad versus Heatran. not so great versus, you know, some of the other Pokemon here. I do think that in general, Kingambit's actually still a pretty decent Pokemon. I just think now that there's so many more tools, you just won't see as much of it. But I would probably be putting Kingambit like around the Enamorus area in terms of like how good I think it is. And I think it has the potential to move up higher. Like I'd probably put it by Annihilate. I think it's a very strong Pokemon. I just think it's one of those Pokemon that tends to get underestimated early in formats. And as the formats progress, like people realize like, oh yeah, wait, this thing's actually really good, right? Cleavor is a Pokemon I actually think has a lot of potential. I would definitely put in the B tier for now. I'd probably be putting it around the Enamorus Grimmsnarl area. I'd probably get lower Grimmsnarl, honestly, below, like down near Fidoradraff. But yeah, Cleavor setting rocks is ridiculous. I think that the fact that Stoneaxe sets rocks is like actually insane. Especially in format with Chinpow D-Knight. Klefki, it's like our only priority screens mon that isn't Grimmsnarl, so it automatically kind of has to be in like this kind of area. The problem is Heatran exists now, which is kind of bad for it, so it's kind of inclining me to bring it down to like a C tier. Okay, Landorus to me is like definitely still an A tier Pokemon. I think it's not. I do not think it's S tier. It's the best Intimidator. Is it S tier? I don't think it is. I don't think it's good enough to justify being an S. I do think it's good, but I think that it's definitely not like as strong as it was in previous formats. It's still good for sure, and I definitely think it deserves to be an A. But I think that you can definitely run teams without it, right? Lander's Eye is really good in my opinion. I think it definitely deserves like a solid B tier spot. I think it's like, if it's not A, honestly, I might even put in A. I think both Lando forms are incredibly good. Special ground coverage is so nasty, and I think it can work really, really well on those kind of teams. Lilligant, I literally just have Lilligant here because it's like one of those mons where it's like, it's a sun mon, so it could probably be fine, but like you should probably just use Hisuian Lilligant. There could be one niche where you need a special attacking Lilligant to maybe KO Urshifu or something. Lycanroc, my dear child, you have been exiled to the C tier zone, and that's like generous. I think it's probably might be worse than that. Mousehold with Follow Me support is down in the C tier for me. I could see it definitely being like a Follow Me bot still with Friend Guard. I think the problem is now like Urshifu being everywhere just instantly makes it like harder for it to survive, right? All right, Mesprit kind of goes down to F. It's literally just worse Cress. Mimikyu, to me, is a B tier Pokemon, and I mean high B tier. And I could maybe even make the argument, I think, for it to be in like A. The Terra Grass Woodhammer set, not only does it pressure Flutter, right, with just regular Sneak, Play Rough for Chinpow, Play Rough for Iron Hands. It could be annoying in the Cress. You have Woodhammer into Dozo, right? You have Woodhammer into the other water types in the format. And on top of that, you can get around to Moongus, which is like the #1 problem. And Disguise. Disguise is really good. So I think there's a lot of potential like benefits to it, right? And its typing's not bad either. Moltres gets put in like the C tier. You have Flame Body. So like I guess you're okay, but like you're probably better off using something like a Volcarona. Murkrow, a Prankstermon, Tailwind, C tier, but probably still worse. Its only niche would be that it doesn't get taunted by opposing Thunder or by opposing Tornadus. So that's like a nice thing about it. But besides that, like there's really not other reason to use it. Oranguru, Hard Trick Room saves you from being in any lower tier. You're around the Hatterene area. I think though I'd probably put him in the B area. He's probably really important for enabling Hard Trick Room the more I think about it. So I could definitely see him being there. Honestly, like, yeah, I feel like Hard Tricker Mons are always going to be, like, B tier. Because, like, they're fine if they're, like, used on the right team. Hisuian Zoroark might be lower. I think Moltres might be lower because they're less proven, right? I think Garchomp might be lower because Hard Trick Room's kind of nice. Yeah, I like that. I like this better. Orthworm, you know, Urshifu being everywhere really hurts you. Heatran being everywhere really hurts you. But Shed Tail is a really cute move, and it can be kind of good. So we're going to put you down in the C tier. And then I'm kind of debating having Charizard and Hariyama here because I feel like they deserve to be a bit higher compared to some of these other Pokemon. Like, I'd probably put Charizard like here, and I'd put like Hariyama like here-ish. And I'd probably put like Mousehold a little bit lower. Yep, I like that. And then we have Overquill. So Overquill is just a new Pokemon, which is why it's on the list. Probably around like the you know, same area next to its brethren. One has access to Terra Normal, Choice Band, Explosion, and Intimidate, and this one is just like more of a safe option, or self-destruct, I should say. Palafin. Palafin's a weird one. I think Palafin's worse. Like, I'm almost certain Palafin's worse, but I feel like on one or two teams it could be good. I definitely think it's in like the C tier area though, because Urshifu just does a lot of what it wants to do better. Paldean Tauros, if at all, is like an F. It's like barely usable. Fire Tauros maybe gets a C placement, and I think that's generous. It's kind of with the other Intimidators right now. I think it's up in the air between all the Intimidators. Like, okay, like who's actually the best of us, or like can I do anything, right? Um, then we have Pelipper. I think Pelipper is actually probably like an A tier mon because you can use it with rain and just auto set rain, and I think that's actually really strong. People are definitely underrating that. I mean, it's a rain bot, right? But it definitely has use. We're gonna pick Pink Gastro one spot above Blue Gastro because I love Pink Gastro. All right, Regidrago. I think Regidrago is definitely a little slept on right now. The problem is Chinpao D Knights everywhere for it. I could definitely see it being good though. I'd probably keep it in like the B tier in terms of viability. I think it has potential for sure. I just don't think it can be higher, at least as of right now. Regieleki is really good. I think this mon is so slept on right now. I think people are underrating the hell out of it. They're like, oh, it's slower than Booster Bundle. Like, they're like Iron Hands in the format, like whatever. Dude, when this mon plays, like if you have it on the right team, I think this Pokemon is so nasty. And I think people are really underrating it right now because Hands is everywhere. But I think it could actually be like meta changing when someone finds a good team with it. Rillaboom, definite S tier. The fact that it can just like spam, fake out U-turns, everything is just absolute insanity. It's like so strong. Roaring Moon to me is like, I feel like with acrobatics coverage, it could actually be kind of a scary threat if used properly. So I kind of want it in like the Garchomp area because I feel like on the right team it could be good. And I feel like it could be usable on more than one team. So that's why I like it there. Rotom Heat is like a C tier at best. Rotom Mo is like bottom of C at best. And then Rotom Wash is probably in like the B tier for... I actually think Rotom Heat might even be better than... Yeah, I'd probably put Rotom Heat above Rotom Wash, and they're both in C, probably. Alright, Sableye. So Sableye has a Prankster. It's a Prankster mon that can't get taunted by opposing Prankster mons, so that inherently makes it a little bit better. That being said, though, it still is a Sableye. So to me, it probably ends up being in like the mid-C area. Probably say next to Orthworm is fair. I think Abomasnow deserves to be higher placed, by the way. So I'm going to do that. Salazzle, fast fake out, not much else. Poison type, I think it's bottom of C at best. I think Murkrow can probably move up a little bit as well, now that we're readjusting the list a little bit. Alright, Scizor, so Scizzor's weird because the main issue is that like Urshifu resists it, right? And then you have Heatran everywhere, which kind of makes it worse. I feel like into like Flutter it could put on a lot of pressure, so it'd be like mid-C-ish area. Like I'd probably say around like the Abomasnow area. Because it has Denisha pressuring it. That's it. I have learned not to underestimate Screamtail. I think this mon's gonna be really good if someone finds the right team with it and the right like setup way to use it. I think it could be incredibly strong if people like use it the right way. All right. So we have Slitherwing. I did this because if you guys don't know, my girlfriend Sierra loves Slitherwing. Okay, absolutely loves Sierra the caster. So for her, I have to have the Slither King category and put him on top. So there you go. Slither King is on top. All right. Anyways, Hisuian Sneasler, okay, is actually a Pokemon with Unburden that I think could be really nasty considering Rillaboom's everywhere and it can put on a lot of pressure. I think it's deserving of being in a high B spot because I think it has a lot of potential like Zapdos just to counter the standard like core right now, which is Urshifu, Rilla, and Heatran. I think the fact that Dire Claw can like roll any status 50% is like kind of insane. Spectrier, incredibly strong. I think it actually is really underrated right now just because Flutter is good. I think like Fast Wisp, Fast Snarl, like it has some good support moves, could be really good. It's just you have to find a way to use it on a team that like doesn't require you to like want Flutter, if that makes sense. So for that, I put it in like the B tier. Probably, actually, I'll probably put it around the Kingambit Annihilate area, right? It's one of those setup mons that has some potential. Sunjorner gets like bottom of C or like kind of like this general area. Like Power Spot's a thing, but besides that, not much else. Sylveon to me is like middle of C, so like having another fairy type option is nice. The problem is that Flutter is just like kind of better in multiple dimensions. The only thing Sylveon has going for it is it's kind of better in Trick Room, or like a little bit better as a bulky Pokemon, but Enamorus exists, so for that kind of reason, I feel like you have to kind of always put it a bit lower than you would put Enamorus, right? It just makes sense that you would put Enamorus higher. Talonflame, unfortunately, because of all the Prankster mons getting it, kind of made its Gale Wings Tailwind a little invalid. I would say like maybe there's a niche for like Fast Will-O-Wisp somewhere, but the fact that Urshifu's everywhere makes it really rough for it, right? Thunderous in my opinion, is actually a really good Pokemon. I'd say it's probably deserving of like high B. I think it can actually be really good. I'd actually put it in probably A. I think Thunderous Darian's actually really good. Being immune to electric coverage, especially when hands is everywhere. Like this thing hard walls hands, right? And I think like that's actually an incredibly useful tool that I can take advantage of. And then on top of that too, right? Regular Thundurus with Prankster is super strong. I'd probably put them like in a similar spot. Maybe Thundurus a little bit higher. Prankster support moves are really broken, and then also too like Bolt Storm makes it better, right? Wild Bolt Storm was like a huge boost for this one. Ting Lu is very underplayed right now, and I think that's just because Rilla, Hands, and Urshifu are everywhere. I don't think it's going to be near as good as it was in the previous format, but I do think that it's worth being like low B at the very least. I could say being really good on the right team. Tornadus Therian is one of those Pokemon that like their Therian form is just not better. It's like the one that just doesn't have a better Therian form than its like regular form, to the point where like you would probably put Tornadus in like S tier because it's like such good speed control. And you'd probably be putting like the regular Tornadus down like near the bottom of C at best. It has Regenerator, but like we're not playing singles here. You know what I mean? Toxapex is also just bottom of C. Toxicroak is, so the only reason, now you might be like, okay, Joe, why the hell are you putting Toxicroak on this list? Toxicroak actually has a result in one of the online tournaments, and it actually won. So I have to leave Toxicroak on the list. Tyranitar is really pressured by a lot of Pokemon in the metagame. Maybe it has a way of being like relevant with a niche, but Urshifu is really bad for it. Ursaluna. So Ursaluna to me is like an A tier Pokemon. Really solid. I think it's like definitely like a really, really good mon. It has a lot of good damage output. Works really well with Cresselia. It is a little limited in what it does, but I think when people start exploring with it and maybe finding other ways to use it, it could be very good. Urshifu. So this is going to count for both Urshifu Dark and Urshifu Water. S tier instantly. I'd probably put it like, honestly, like right behind Flutter in terms of how good I think it is. And I put Rilla and Amoonguss next to each other. I think it's just so splashable. And it's so good. And it's really hard to like not use it. You know what I mean? Like it's just so good on so many teams. And it just offers so much, right? So I really think that like Urshifu, with between its dark and its water version, the water version having a lot of coverage for a lot of strong Pokemon, hits Flutter, hits Hands neutrally for a lot, hits a lot of the Genies for neutral, hits Crest really strong for neutral, hits Heatran really strong for neutral, and then everything it can hit with water coverage, it just shreds with close combat, right? Or at least does a lot of damage. So to me, I just feel like the Urshifu is just like very, very good. Uxie is bad, pretty much. It's like C tier. If I'm putting his elf down in, or if I'm putting his elf down in F tier, I feel like I have to. Honestly, like if I'm putting some of these, like some of the mons I'm seeing here, I feel like it's unfair to not have them in C. But yeah, they're like bottom of C. Like the problem is like all these guys are usually worse versions of Cresselia. So yeah, Vivillon. I mean, fast sleep powder, friend guard. That's all you got going for you. You at least deserve like a spot in C. Volcarona. Okay, so this is the last Pokemon that I really want to talk about that I think is really strong. I think this mon is so slept on right now. I think its typing's insane. I think with Gastrodon, it's a menace. And I think into a lot of, like, look at Volcarona's matchups across the board, right? Terra Grass means you could beat this, right? But you wall this if you get a QD up. You beat this, you beat this. You wall this, pretty much. This doesn't pressure you at all. You can beat this. This walls you. Heatran hard walls you, but you can set up on it, right? Torn hits you. And then, like, there are definitely other Pokemon that hit you here. But Volcarona still has a lot of like positive matchups across the board. Wo-Chien, you poor sweet child, you're probably in C. Wordeer, you poor sweet child, you're probably in bottom of C. And I think you should really be F, honestly. Zapdos, the final Pokemon. I think Zapdos has potential. My issue is just I don't think that it is offering much more than some of the other electric types right now. So if someone can find a niche for it, I could see being better. I think putting it around the area of Garchomp and Roaring Moon is very fair because it's still legendary that hasn't been explored as much. But given the current metagame, I feel like it deserves to be where it is. So for a final list, in our S tiers, we have Fluttermane, Urshifu, both forms, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, Iron Hands, Chien-Pao, Cresselia, Heatran, Tornadus. Then we have Regieleki, Landorus, Ursaluna, Dondozo, and Tatsu, Dragonite, Armoroge. Oh, wait, where's Indeedee? Huh. Okay, Ndidi's not here. Just assuming Ndidi's next to the Armourouge, okay? I don't know why Ndidi's not here. I think... Oh, I remember. When I was getting the sprites, there was... So I deleted the male Ndidi, but I guess the male Ndidi was the only one that existed for some reason. So, yeah, just kind of assumed, I guess. Or I just kind of assumed there was a female Ndidi, but maybe there's not. So, yes, Ndidi should be here, by the way. And then, yeah, Basculegion, you know, rain, all this stuff. And then, yeah, we kind of get down to weather here. But I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think I had pretty good reasoning for everything. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Put a lot of time into it, obviously, and thought. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if you agree, disagree, where you think stuff should have been. But yeah, thank you guys for chilling and watching the video. I appreciate it. I'll catch you guys next video. Peace.